The Black Hills Expedition was a United States Army expedition in 1874 led by Lieutenant Colonel George Armstrong Custer that set out on July 2, 1874 from modern-day Bismarck, North Dakota, which was then Fort Abraham Lincoln in the Dakota Territory, with orders to travel to the previously uncharted Black Hills of South Dakota. Its mission was to look for suitable locations for a fort, find a route to the southwest, and to investigate the possibility of gold mining. Custer and his unit, the 7th Cavalry, arrived in the Black Hills on July 22, 1874, with orders to return by August 30. The expedition set up a camp at the site of the future town of Custer, while Custer and the military units searched for a suitable location for a fort. Civilians searched for gold, and it is disputed whether or not any substantial amount was found. Nonetheless, this prompted a mass gold rush which in turn antagonized the Sioux Indians, who had been promised protection of the sacred land through treaties made by the U.S. government, and who were later to kill Custer at the Battle of the Little Big Horn in the Great Sioux War of 1876–77 between themselves and the United States. The entire expedition was photographed by William H. Illingworth, an English photographer who accompanied Custer after selection by the then Captain William Ludlow. Ludlow, the engineer for the expedition, financed Illingworth's photography and paid him $30 per month to provide photographic plates for the U.S. Army, of which he made 70 in all. Expedition. Embarking for the Black Hills, Custer embarked on his expedition with 1,000 to 1,200 men, in 110 wagons with numerous horses and cattle of the 7th Cavalry, along with artillery and 2 months' food supply. The expedition also took a number of Native American scouts led by Bloody Knife and Lean Bear. At the time, the Black Hills were relatively unknown, with few white expeditions ever returning from them. The commander of Custer's Engineering Corps, Captain Hardy, assured him that he had heard of them and had them marked on his maps, but he had never entered them during his earlier expeditions. En route to the Black Hills, Custer's party managed to locate the track of Hardy's group when they spotted 2 lines of sunflowers that had grown along the ruts of his passing wagons. Custer and his force entered the Black Hills from the north, traveling south at a slow pace of no more than 4 or 5 miles a day on some occasions. On July 31, 1874, the wagon train reached Harney Peak, and Custer, together with Ludlow, took 3 or 4 men to climb it. In the meantime, the rest of the expedition made camp at the mountain's base at the newly named Custer Park. While the majority of the force remained there, Custer took a small unit with him to locate a suitable site for a new fort. By August 2, 1874, this force had reached a point 8.5 miles southeast of the mountain, to a location they named Agnes Park, having had a number of peaceful encounters with Native American settlements. On August 7, Custer shot and killed a grizzly bear, forever claiming this to be his greatest achievement as a hunter. Discovery of gold throughout the expedition. Civilian experts who accompanied the expedition located traces of gold in the rivers. The first discovery goes uncredited. However, an undated diary entry by William Mackay, a miner accompanying the expedition, notes that while camping at the newly named Custer Park in the evening, I took a pan, pick and shovel, and went out prospecting. The first panful was taken from the gravel and sand obtained in the bed of the creek, and on washing was found to contain from 1.5 to 2 which was the first gold found in the Black Hills. A significant discovery was made on August 1 when tests of the soil by the French Creek determined that a miner could earn as much as $150 per day mining in the Black Hills. Custer wrote in a letter of August 15, 1874 to the Assistant Adjutant General of the Department of Dakota that there is no doubt as to the existence of various metals throughout the hills. His messages were carried by Scout Charlie Reynolds to Fort Laramie, and from there it was telegraphed to the press eastwards. The force remained there at Agnes Park until August 15, whereupon it turned around to return to Fort Lincoln. The expedition returned on August 30, with the scouts returned to the reservations on September 10. In total, Custer and his forces had traveled for 60 days over 883 miles. Organization of the 7th Cavalry. The table of organization for the 7th Cavalry for the Black Hills expedition of 1874 was as follows. Field and Staff Lt. Colonel George Armstrong Custer, Lt. Colonel Frederick D. Grant, a 4th Cavalry and Acting Aide Major George A. Forsyth, 9th Cavalry Commander 1st Lieutenant James Calhoun, Adjutant, 1st Lieutenant Algernon E. Smith, Quartermaster 2nd Lieutenant George D. Wallace, Commander of the Indian Scouts, Cavalry Companies Company A, Captain Miles Moylan and 2nd Lieutenant Charles Varnum, Company B, 1st Lieutenant Benjamin H. Hodges on Company C, Captain Verlon Hart and 2nd Lieutenant Henry M. Harrington, Company E, 1st Lieutenant M. McDougall, Company F, Captain George W. Yates, Company G, 1st Lieutenant Donald McIntosh, Company H, Captain Frederick W. Benton and 1st Lieutenant Francis M. Gibson, Company K, Captain Owen Hale and 1st Lieutenant Edward S. Godfrey, Company L, 1st Lieutenant Thomas W. Custer, Company M, Captain Thomas French and 1st Lieutenant Edward Gustav Mathy. Medical Staff Dr. John W. Williams, Chief Medical Officer, Dr. S. J. Allen, Jr. Assistant Surgeon, Dr. A. C. Bergen, Assistant Surgeon. Engineering Captain William Ludlow, Chief Engineer W. H. Wood, Civilian Assistant, Mining Detachment Horatio Nelson Ross William McKay. Scientist George Bird Grinnell Newton H. Winchell A.B. Donaldson Luther North. Photographer William H. Illingworth. Correspondence William E. Curtis, Chicago Inter-Ocean Samuel J. Barrows, New York Tribune Nathan H. Knappen, Bismarck Tribune.